Good afternoon and welcome everyone to my channel. I'm Kip Davis. I'm a specialist in early Judaism and a scholar of the Bible. And this is kind of the stuff that I do here on YouTube. I'm joined by my good friend and producer, the lovely Vishanti. Good to see you, Vishanti.
How's it going?
It's going okay. Today is Wednesday, December the 18th. It is 2 o'clock in the afternoon out here on the West Coast, where we both are. Vishanti and I are both broadcasting live and in person from various places up and down the West Coast of North America. So it's good to see a bunch of people here. It's good to see you, Triceratops, Nikki Isom, James's interviews, alias fake names, Tommy Thomas, Simone, happy to see you. This guy, I always forget what the oh wow, the governor's here. I feel like I haven't seen you around for a little while. Emergency Moto is here. So yes, the gang's here. And I hope everyone is doing well. It was cold the last few days. It started to warm up quite a lot. This afternoon, went for a nice walk with the dogs. The sun was shining. Oh, Michael Beverly's in the house. Enjoyed your video that you dropped today, Michael. Michael Beverly made a video, and let's be fair, Michael, picking on the lowest of fruit in the pile. Michael Beverly made a video about Stephanie J. Thomason, S.J. Thomason. And having had some experience. Yes, I know. I feel bad every time too, Michael, when I make fun of SJ, but what are you gonna do? I mean, she just kind of walks into this stuff of her own volition. She just, she opens her mouth, she turns on her camera, and the stupidity flows. What are you gonna do?
And you don't have to make bad arguments.
You don't have
It's just
to.
not a thing you have to do. So anyway.
Just call you what? Just call you Yahweh? I guess we could do that. That works. So the governor is improving himself to be fluent in French. That's good to hear. Happy to hear that. That's a noble goal. So yeah. Well, I'm having this stream in the middle of the afternoon, in large part or entirely. Not just, I mean, I just like doing live streams. I like coming on and hanging out with y'alls. That's always fun. I saw something though before the weekend. Did you see this, Vishanti? You might not have noticed before I drew your attention to it, but Alex O'Connor and another gentleman I'd never heard of before. His name is I think it's Phil Harper. Yes, Simone, absolutely. Throw a question in there. We'll tag it. If you guys have questions, feel free to throw those into the chat. If you want to make sure we see them, super chat for priority. When you super chat, it helps me out a lot to continue doing this kind of content if you enjoy it. So, but I'm pretty easygoing. When I see questions that I think are interesting, I will oftentimes respond to those too. So I don't know, Vish, did you notice before I poked you about the Alex O'Connor, Phil Harper?
I don't keep up with any of them.
Yeah. So Alex O'Connor, who runs a huge channel, The Cosmic Skeptic, he does some really, really good interviews. Oh, here we go. I think the Bible Lore podcast has figured this out. Shoot, not there. That one. Sorry, guys. It is what it is, right? I can only be true to me. So let's flag that question from Simone. All right. So Alex O'Connor runs a huge channel. He does a lot of really good, really interesting interviews with public figures, figures in social media spaces, talking largely about philosophy and science and religion. So recently he had on, of all people, Cliffe and Stuart Knechtle from, I don't even know what's the name of their website. It's like Ask Me a Question or something like that. They're lousy Christian apologists. They've been around forever. They've always kind of been bad at this. Their shtick is going around to college campuses and accosting mostly, young people on campus there. Blah blah blah. Kip Davis. Blah. That's exactly what my kids hear when I'm speaking. That is true. So good to see you, Josh. I guess he's probably finished work by now. So he's probably looking after his enormous brood of children. So
he's starting a tribe.
He's starting a tribe. That's true. So, but yeah, Cliffe and Stuart Knechtle go around to college campuses and insert themselves into public spaces on college campuses, accosting young people and students who are just trying to go about their day. They just want to study, guys, and find the emotional, mental bandwidth to navigate the labyrinth that is college. I mean, most of them are just trying to figure themselves out. They don't need to be accosted and harassed by old white men, wandering around the public square and yelling at them. That's honestly a lot of what they do. Is they just go onto campuses and they yell at people. And when they do gather a crowd and students engage them in some way, they make videos of that and throw them up on YouTube. It's a pretty big channel. It's apparently effective on some level, because I had noticed that the Knechtles have several 100,000 subscribers to their channel.
Bad arguments are popular. What can I say?
Popular. Yes, they are. Yes, they are. So, it's that's kind of who they are. Somehow, they ended up on Alex O'Connor's. It's true. It's very true, Constantine. And I there's nothing I can do to help that, except the difference between me and the Knechtles is I'm not loitering on college campuses, yelling at students. Not anymore. Maybe I did that a little bit when I was actually an employee at various universities. But that's
Yeah,
different.
but you're getting paid to do it.
Paid to do that. And under those conditions, it was usually, because the kids. Good to see you, A-Train. Oh, are we both trying to?
Oh, I didn't touch it.
You didn't touch that? Was that me? It's good to see you, A-Train. Thanks for coming out. So, and let's be frank here. I didn't do a lot of yelling at college students on campus. Oh, yes. It's supposed to be a secret.
Didn't you sign an NDA for that?
Yikes!
This is deep industry.
I'm gonna be.
Stuff,
I'm in big trouble now.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Like
thanks,
a lot of
A-Train.
people that don't work in the industry or don't have friends that do, you may not be aware that it kind of sucks right now, because even actors who go in for auditions are having to sign an NDA, and they cannot disclose what they're auditioning for, even if they don't get the role, which sucks.
Yeah, right. That is.
Yeah.
That's lame.
But hey, I would look forward to seeing you in The Boys season 5.
I'm excited about it. Very excited. Tune in, everyone.
Especially if a train ran through you and exploded you into giblets.
I can't say. I'm not. I mean, A Train's free to break his NDA if he's into that kind of thing. But oh no, Yahweh doesn't even know what The Boys are, dude. Come on. The Boys, check it out. It's must watch. It's must watch television as far as I'm concerned. So
it's just so on the nose the way that it shades superhero culture and American politics.
Yes.
And I just love it when it pisses off conservatives, because how did you not notice that it was taking a massive shit on you before this season?
Right? I know. It's super campy. And it feels like it's getting progressively more so, but that's a lot of.
I mean, it's going off the rails, but I mean, look at America.
Yes,
we're going off the rails.
It's true.
We live in the dumbest timeline.
Yes, we do. So speaking of dumb timelines, in this one, Alex and Stuart Knechtle ended up on. Sorry, I said Alex. Cliffe and Stuart Knechtle ended up on Alex O'Connor's podcast, and then I opened my YouTube on like Thursday morning or something, and was astonished to see that they were doing a debate that day with Alex O'Connor and this other guy, Phil Harper, I believe is his name. I might get it wrong. I've never heard of him before. I don't know. I'm interested. I honestly, I'm not altogether that interested in debates. I'm not all that interested in people who make arguments about the existence of God, or whether or not evolution is true or the earth is flat. I mean, it's kind of fun, right, watching that sort of stuff, but it doesn't it doesn't, yeah, it's not really my thing. But what really drew my attention to this is the fact that Cliffe in particular made the very, very ill-advised choice to venture into biblical cosmology, and did such a terrible job, like unbelievably terrible. Like, this is I think this is really what prompted it. And I posted this on Twitter after it happened, and I think I might have made a comment about this on YouTube as well. Like, these are men who I assume have been to seminary. They're ministers. Cliffe certainly has some training in Christian ministry, which means one would hope that he's actually spent some time in seminary. And maybe before I got on here, something that I should have done was taken the time to have a look and see exactly who Cliffe is and what his educational background is. In fact, maybe Vishanti, if you've got some time, maybe you can dig around for some of that while I'm talking here, and we can check that out as we go. But I honestly, like, this is basic stuff. This is the basic stuff, and it's tragic how bad, how poorly they have represented scholarship. Okay, here we go. Davidson College in North Carolina, and graduated from Gordon-Conwell Theological Seminary. Like, that's not the double wide trailer that Kent Hovind graduated from, guys. It doesn't even make their notable alumni list. No, because like Gordon-Conwell actually has some, right? Like, it's embarrassing. It's if you ever do see this, Cliffe Knechtle, you are embarrassing your alma mater by your utter biblical incompetence. And that's what today's stream is about, guys. Today's stream is about biblical incompetence and biblical illiteracy. I'd graduate from Gordon-Conwell School of FBI Studies. Twin Peaks gang, let's go.
Fix your hearts or die.
Patriot University, where Hovind got his terminal degree, has parking for 8. That's true. So that's, you know, that's slightly more parking than I have at my house. So my wife and I each have a vehicle, and each of my 3 kids do. That's 5. And they're all out there in the driveway somehow. I also have like a holiday trailer parked beside the garage there too. So I'm does that mean I'm like 65 or 70% on my way to being a diploma mill?
I guess. Anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, let's get into this. So I've got a few places that I thought we would stop and take a look here. So in this first part, I think Stuart is making his opening statement, and he's got some comments about his understanding of ancient Near Eastern mythology and worldview, I guess. So let's take a look at what he has to say.
The second point would be, I think there was a great beginning, and I think that there is a linear perspective that we all espouse, whether we want to believe it or not, shown through all books, many movies, the literature, even many of the narratives that we get in the media, as skewed as they often are, which is a linear approach, which the Bible espouses, the biblical God espouses, where there was a great beginning. All other worldviews at the time were cyclical for the most part, and there was no linear progression. But in the beginning, the Bible starts off right in Genesis with that important form of language, that there was a great beginning. We understand starting in the 1920s, we obviously in the about 1915, you had Einstein with the fudge factor trying to say, no, the universe is infinite. But again, the biblical God, unlike Zeus, unlike any of the other gods at the time, and post after the biblical God as well, it was a cyclical type of deterministic, almost Hindu form of God. And you need God, you must have God, and ultimately I land on the beauty of God. That's why a big part of the reason why I believe in him. I think we all want grace, we all want forgiveness, we all want to.
Wow, eh? So do you guys think I should pull Josh in for a few minutes on
100% yes.
All right, let me send you the link, and we can get you up here too. So wow, like what the hell was that? Seriously. The Bible has a linear worldview, and that's somehow dramatically different from the cyclical worldview of the surrounding.
It's literally not. The Bible, the Hebrew Bible sets up festivals that run on a yearly cycle that's oriented around like the seasons and the equinox and stuff like that. Where is he getting this idea of linear?
I'm just trying to figure out. Like, it feels like he's heard things. It feels like he's heard things or read things at some point about the composition of Hebrew. I suspect Hebrew narrative. I think that's probably what he's talking about here. He's got in his mind's eye some sort of sense of Hebrew narrative and the fact that the stories of creation, there's 2 of them. I doubt he recognizes that, but these stories in creation, the stories of creation at the beginning of the book of Genesis. Oh, it sucks when we're both doing this stuff, Josh. It's good to see you. How you doing?
I'm doing okay.
Did you hear all that?
No, I didn't. Sorry. I was
Really?
trying to get. Yeah,
okay.
trying to come up
Okay.
with a clever name. This is the best I got.
Dodge. Thanks, man. That's a sweet that's a sweet avatar picture you have up there,
Thank
by
you.
the way.
I'm growing the
The
beard back.
Are you really?
Yeah,
Didn't it but I mean, you told me it drove you nuts.
it hurt. Yeah, that's true.
Why
But
why do you put yourself through this?
well, I just want to be cool like you, so that's where I'm at.
You're doing it wrong, man. You're doing it wrong. But I think you've tuned into parts of this discussion, this debate, right? Before
Yeah,
with
definitely.
Cliffe. So I'm trying to sort out what on earth he's talking about, what Stuart is talking about when
With the
he
cyclical
says
thing.
the cyclical versus linear. I think he might have heard something about the construction of Hebrew narrative. Maybe he's read something like Robert Alter or I don't know who else. Something like that, and about the invention of as some scholars, particularly back in the 70s and the 80s, it was popular to talk about the invention of prose and tying that to stuff
I mean, it's
in some of
also
these early texts
possible,
in the
Kip,
Bible.
that it's possible there was a book that was published on
Oh
Amazon
God, no.
that he just happened to see and pick up. And look, it's all a journey.
It's all a journey.
When the reality is, like, I
I
have no fucking clue what he's
No
talking about.
idea.
I mean,
No idea.
set aside, and you probably said this while I was coming in, but like set aside just the problem with Genesis 1:1 being like a definitive starting point, from nothing.
Is it? Right? It's not, right? It's
Yeah.
it's not. Um
I
and
mean, and it fits perfectly. Like this is the issue. Like I just reread the Enuma Elish.
Yes. Yes.
And I like sorry, this is how ancient Near Eastern cosmogonies start off, right?
Oh my God, yes.
They're in these dependent clauses that are temporal, and there are things that kind of are there in the beginning. Usually or often it's like primordial water, and that's what's going on in Genesis 1:1. Like I don't this is just
It's the same
yeah,
thing. Like
yeah.
when you put the two of them side by side, this is why scholars for centuries, or at least long more than a century, have been pointing out that Genesis 1 is riffing on the Enuma Elish in large part because of this construction using dependent clauses to introduce these texts.
Yeah, I mean, this is what's sort of frustrating about I don't know. I think Stuart's like a nice guy. Like he and I have
I'm
interacted a
sure he
bunch
is.
before.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is why I wish I had the confidence of 40 something white man, right? Like it's what I wish I had that confidence. I mean, I guess I am that, so I'm lacking, but God, like what must that be like to have like seriously no training in something and then just go in and make these clear definitive statements about, what an entire set of cosmogonies looks like.
Oh my
Like
God, yes. And yeah, I mean, just you're absolutely spot on. And just listening to it again, right? And I picked up on this maybe for the first time just listening to this again. He sets these two apart as like definitive features. This linear versus cyclical nonsense. Like it's astonishing to me. Like even in his head, does he think that before Genesis chapter 1 was written, people all over the world were just going, well, I just have no idea how to start a story. I I just have no concept how to craft a beginning of a text. Like, is that what he thinks? Because it sure sounds like that's where he's going with this.
Yeah.
Well,
I
if
don't
you
know.
know evangelicals, you'll know that even though they will acknowledge that other texts from other nations have been written before the Bible's surviving manuscripts, they think that those are just corrupted versions of the truth.
Yeah. No, you're right. Well, I don't know. Do you have anything more do you have anything more to say about that, or should we move on to what's next
Yeah,
here?
we can move on. I just asked Megan while I was on mute.
Oh.
Yeah, I just asked her. Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, that's right. We're just talking about, does Stuart have, is there anything that she can think of that he might be thinking of? And yeah, nothing that stands out from the biblical text anyway. Sorry.
No, it's good. Thank you, Megan, for weighing in. I appreciate it. It's it's a mystery. But apparently this sounds like a clever point that that he's made to numbers in his audience, I suppose, eh? So, all right.
What is most plausible to believe?
In the next, I'll just set this up. In this next clip, Cliff is going to talk here a little bit about historical evidence for Jesus. So I know this isn't really your thing, Josh, but I mean, you have also been to seminary. And like this is basic stuff. This is easy stuff. These are softballs. All right.
And when you look at the historical evidence of the way Jesus lived, taught, died, and rose from the dead, I think the evidence is rather clear. He is trustworthy in a way that none of the options are. Whenever I struggle with doubt, and I regularly struggle with doubt, I go over some of the points that I just made, but I also go over the alternatives to Christ, be it materialism, atheism, evolution, agnosticism, Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam. And although there are points that can be made on behalf of all of those options, those points are nothing when it comes to credibility, when it comes to reasonableness, when it comes to reliability that support Jesus Christ. He lived a sinless life. In my best moments, I wish that I could live like Jesus, but I failed miserably. He taught amazing teachings. Robert Coles, professor emeritus at Harvard, pointed out that all the teachings on ethics over the past 2,000 years are simply footnotes to the Sermon on the Mount. He not only lived an amazing life, not only taught an amazing life, but he died an incredible death. At the moment of his most excruciating pain, instead of cursing his enemies the way I would have, he prayed, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. But fourthly, and most importantly, not only did he teach amazing teachings, not only did he live an amazing life, not only did he die an amazing death, forgiving his enemies who nailed him to the cross, but fourthly, and most importantly, the historical evidence is 3 days after he died, he rose from the dead. So due to that evidence, I am convinced that Jesus Christ is reliable in a way that none of the options are. Now, there are two good reasons.
That's just a bunch of claims.
What's the argument here?
How dare
know.
you guys? How dare you?
Uh-oh.
He repeated it several times. It has to be right. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Come
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
Just go with
It
it.
has to be true. But like, what is the argument here? Jesus is credible because he rose from the dead and because he died. Did he call it an amazing death?
Yeah. Not how I would
Well,
have termed it,
he
but
wasn't mean to the people killing him, therefore.
There we go. Yes, he wasn't mean to those who were killing him. Therefore,
This is
right.
This is it right here.
I love Jesus, so Christianity is right. Yeah, I think that's what it boils down to. But the formulation here is what I'm struggling to find, even remotely halfway convincing. Yeah. And I'm willing to bet I should have looked this guy up, but the Harvard professor of law or ethics or who have you made a statement once about all legal ethical all ethical teachings since the time of Jesus are just footnotes to the Sermon on the Mount.
What would be great is if he was like a if he was like a evolutionary biologist or something.
Yes, that would be awesome. But like seriously, is this like I shouldn't be surprised because I've heard things. When I used to go to church, I used to hear very similar sorts of things, right? But I just don't understand the argument here. And
Again, it's I love Jesus, therefore
yeah,
Christianity's right.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this seems to be. I know I always give this analogy or this comparison, but I mean, like, I feel like I can make a pretty strong case for the reliability of Naramsin
Mhm.
in this regard, right? I mean, like, we have so much physical evidence, textual, iconographic, like we have all kinds of and various types of texts, royal inscriptions, administrative texts. Like we have all kinds of data to support the fact that Naram-Sin did this great deed for his city and the gods made him divine, right? I mean, like,
Must have happened.
must have, and that's true. That means that everything that Naram-Sin said is trustworthy. Like yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
these arguments, I don't know, they're lacking. Kip, I'm probably gonna have to go in
All
like
right.
2 minutes, but
Okay.
I wanted to say you're obviously gonna hammer this, but since I'm up here, if I could just for a second,
Yes, please, sir.
I wanna weigh in just to touch on the dumb fuckery that is Cliff getting so angry at the bizarre and ridiculous and what did he say, scary notion?
Yes, the scary
The
notion.
scary notion that the biblical texts teach a dome over the earth.
Over the earth.
Oh man, that's crazy.
It's
So
so
I would
nuts.
encourage. I would encourage, and again, you're going to go through this, I'm sure, in so much more detail, but just so I can sleep tonight, I would encourage Cliff and Stuart to go read the Enuma Elish, right? Read about what what Marduk does with Tiamat's body, what in particular he does with the top. And then to go back and look up the word, as Phil pointed out, and you're going to point out, rakia, see what rakah means, then see what happens in Genesis 7 when the great fountains of the deep are opened up and the great sluice gates of heaven are opened to let the water come back down. What does he think that means?
It's
Who
scary,
knows?
Josh. It's
Scary, though. This is a scary
Scary.
notion.
It's
Or
just
maybe just tell him to crack open a commentary. Any commentary will do.
any commentary. Seriously, guys, like anyone. Even the bad ones. Open up
Even
a
the bad
bad
ones.
commentary
God.
and you'll get some help on this. Oh man.
All right,
So,
man. Thank you for letting me shoot off here.
For sure.
I'm gonna go wrestle some kids, but kick some ass here. I'll try to listen in.
Thanks for popping in, Josh. See you
All
later.
right, man. Thanks. See ya.
All right.
I always love getting questions like this. It's like asking
Why do
someone
you guys
why
hate
they
God so much?
why do they hate Spock so much? Like Spock's not real. I mean, as a character, you could not like the writing, but I always love this. Like, why do you hate things that you don't believe exist? Okay. Anyway, I got it queued to the next timestamp.
Nice, thanks. And before you start that, let me just say, I mean, I think people can watch my own deconstruction story is over. I think it's at a Myth Vision podcast. Did a recording of it. You can go watch it over there. But listen, for most of my adult Christian life, I believed pretty much all exactly the same things that I still do about the Bible, which is what we're talking about here, right? We're talking about the Bible. We're talking about this text and how it's written, why it's written, what it's about, and how people continue to reappropriate it and to understand it and misunderstand it. That's what's going on here. So, all right. So this is here.
Okay.
Here, Phil's going to tee this up here about the cosmology in Genesis chapter 1.
Biblical God. And if we can't, then the moral argument fails. Either way, God fails. Now, the cosmology of the Bible is another clue to God's fictitious nature. It describes the sky as having a solid dome called the firmament. And we have good reasons to think the authors believe this. The Hebrew word rakeus implies it, surrounding cultures believed it, and the Bible describes it as holding up the waters above and being firm as a mirror of cast metal. Talmudic rabbis debated how thick it was, and Christian thinkers from Augustine to Martin Luther all agreed it was solid. But if we know there is no firmament, Genesis also describes primordial waters, plants and grasses, existing before stars were created. Yet science tells us the stars came first. And of course, humans are described as being made through special creation rather than evolution. If the biblical God is a human invention, then all these mistakes are unsurprising. But if he's real, why get so many things wrong and make the same mistakes as surrounding cultures? If Genesis were right, maybe Christian distrust of science wouldn't be so high today. And this has consequences. Atheist acceptance of climate science is double that of Christians and triple that of evangelical Christians. This could be Christianity's most horrific legacy, turning many people away from science and thus contributing to a climate catastrophe. God could have easily avoided this by guiding the text to have less errors, but he didn't. Yet again, a fact well explained if he doesn't exist. Now, Stu argued, for the beginning of the...
I think that's it, right?
That is a call out.
Yeah.
That is a call out.
Yeah. It really is.
He doesn't get into the why of evangelicals just going, no, climate change isn't real. Because even the ones that will acknowledge that climate changes, even when they say that sometimes humans cause it, they don't care because Jesus is coming back in 5 minutes and he's going to remake the earth anyway. So why does it matter?
Yeah, it feels like that. And I have these, I remember when I was a pretty young man still, and before I actually went to university, having these feelings of skepticism with regards to climate science, all as a product of just my own eschatology, right? My own perspective of what I understood the world to be and where I thought things were going. This all came out of my own religious thinking. So I totally get it. And I think you're absolutely on point. It's an important point he made about climate
what motivation
change denialism,
does
right?
somebody have to care about events like this when you think you're going to take the rapture bus any minute? Like, why do you care about things that are going bad here? You don't. That's why you see such a fundamental shift in mindset and priorities between different religious communities. The ones that don't think that you're going to get raptured out of here in the next 5 minutes are like, oh my gosh, there's a lot that's broken that we can help fix. Let's do that soon and not put it off before we can't help anymore. And that is the opposite of evangelical fundamentalist like eschatology. It's like, yeah, well, it's ended in 5 minutes, so who cares?
Yeah. Oh, well, it's good to see you here, Maya. Thanks for coming out. All right. So, but in terms of let's because this is what Cliffe is going to do now is he's going to set his focus on the cosmology question. Just to break this down, right? Phil has just made an important point, I think, about biblical cosmology, about the construction of the world, of the cosmos, in the perspective of the authors of the Bible. This includes this is not just the author of the first creation story in Genesis chapter 1. This is pretty much all of them. This is all the biblical authors take for granted a fairly specific view of the cosmos. And Phil is pointing this out. One of the features of biblical cosmology is a ubiquitously common feature of ancient Near Eastern cosmology, and that is this notion that the earth is a flat plane and that the sky is a hard surface stretched over top and supported on all sides, usually by the mountains. The mountains support this solid dome that most English translations understand as the firmament. This is not just the Bible here, right? This is a ubiquitous feature, as I said, of ancient Near Eastern cosmology. This was a common idea. This was cutting edge science of, the Iron Age.
Yeah, and it's pretty easy to come to that as a conclusion, because when you're standing on the ground, it does look like the sky is a dome above you. I mean, without having figured out that the Earth is rotating, it looks like things are rotating around you. So it's just
exactly.
It's a very simple and obvious conclusion to come to, even though we know now that it's not correct. And
without
Phil made a mention of rabbis debating how thick the dome is, and I know exactly what he's talking about, because I remember reading in Pesachim and Bava Batra, the rabbis discussing, and this is like 200-300 years into the Common Era, they're like, hey, our sages are saying that during the day, the sun is just going underneath like the inner curve of the dome, and it goes outside and above it and circles back around.
Yeah.
But the Greeks are saying that it goes underneath the earth at night. And we think the Greeks are right, because they already knew that the planet was round. And they have a discussion about like how long it takes the sun and how thick the dome is, because they were working off the models that their ancestors and all of the ancient Near Eastern people were working with. So
that's just it, right? And this is, I mean, it's just such an from an historical perspective, this is unproblematic. Like I think Phil is right in terms of his presentation of this from a certain perspective of Christian religion, right? Not everyone, but there are definitely stripes of Christianity that this is an important critique against. And I would say too, I think it is somewhat illustrative of a larger problem with the distrust of authority in science among certain stripes of Christians. Jesus Tales notes that I also noticed at the last minute today that Myth Vision went live at the same time I did, and I think he actually scheduled his after mine, so that's kind of rude, but what are you gonna do?
yeah.
So, but awesome. It's so great though that you guys are all here.
I start some things for later that we'll come back to. But,
okay. All right. So
yeah, I was just gonna say it's one of those things that like I try to clarify this for people when we bring up these topics like flat Earth and cosmology. You're not going to find a verse in the Hebrew Bible that says the Earth is flat and a dome is above it. It assumes a flat Earth with a dome. The only direct references that you get are when it talks about the rakia or the
dome,
the firmament.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So all of these, and this is where my astonishment amped up to 11, guys, with Cliff's response, because all of this stuff, just to set this up, and I'm sure everyone here is aware of this, because this is easy stuff. This is common knowledge. This is the sort of thing that everybody should know if they don't already. What Phil said in broad strokes about the biblical picture of cosmology is accurate. Basically accurate in terms of the presentation of what the universe, what the world looks like, according to the Bible. So I think we need to stop, and we hear. Sorry, I think we need to stop, and we need to hear what Cliffe has to say about this.
Okay. Yeah, this is the 40-minute timestamp where he's going to say stupid things about biblical cosmology. So if any of you have your oven mitts handy, I highly recommend them for facepalm.
Put them on. Yeah, that's actually what I put in my notes here.
let him
Cliffe's
roll.
just stupid things about biblical
It's an
cosmology.
honor talking with you two gentlemen. I'm a little shocked that I heard that Genesis teaches that there's a steel dome over the universe.
Pause it for a second, Vish.
That is embarrassing.
Pause it.
I'm
Did
sorry,
you hear
steel?
that? Well,
Steel.
Phil said he did say that there is a dome above, and I think at one point he said it's like steel. And we can talk about that, but that's not what it is. I don't think that's what he's thinking. The text suggests
Quick
that it is.
question. Did they
Yeah.
have steel in the Iron Age?
I don't think they
Hmm.
did.
What about the
Oh.
Bronze Age?
So, and definitely not in the Bronze Age. And apparently everyone's here because I'm the guy who gets white girl wasted. So,
feeling those
not today, guys.
tests.
I'm drinking water. I'm drinking water today,
Yeah.
guys. So
It's a good day to hydrate.
that's
so.
yes, the bottle of Japanese whiskey I emptied on Saturday. So yeah, just water today.
Okay.
Good to
do
see.
you want to continue?
Godless Granny
Hey,
is
Godless
here.
Granny.
Yes. So
Yeah.
and you too, Sparrow the Sissy. So yes, Cliffe has just said this is embarrassing. This idea about there being a solid dome over the earth, according to the Bible.
I've read the Bible many, many times over the past 60 years. I can promise you there is no science anywhere in the Bible. Science is a discussion of process, how an organism works. There is absolutely no biology, no chemistry, no physics, no geology, no astronomy anywhere in the Bible. And if someone insists that there is, I think that they have an incredibly wooden interpretation of a book, and that's scary. Secondly, there are problems in the New Testament. There are problems in the Old Testament.
Pause it there. He's providing this strong denial about the presence of a dome over the earth within the Bible.
Saying there's no astronomy.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Play stars in the
I mean,
March time. Like
that's only like one of the main parts of that's one of the main themes of the story.
Joseph
Genesis
uses
right?
sympathetic magic in order to breed spotted and striped.
Sure.
Or spotted
Jacob.
sheep that aren't, different. Jacob, sorry.
Yeah.
So that it's not good biology, but
no, that's true. That's true. But it's a strange rebuttal to lean this hard into such an egregious error. But should we let him cook for a bit?
Yeah.
Let's see.
Yeah.
Let's see where
we'll see where he's going with this, because he just made some very strong claims, and I want to see if he ends up getting trapped by them.
But I can promise you, it is totally plausible for two thieves nailed to crosses on either side of Christ to heap insults on him, and then for one of them to have a change of heart, a change of mind. There is absolutely no.
Why does this matter?
I don't know.
What does it matter that two people also being killed by the state said some stuff?
And
what am I missing there?
What I have no clue. Like what? Oh, okay. Sorry, I was hearing something. It's a dog chewing a bone. Yeah, I have no clue. Oh, Simone is saying that it was something that was brought up by Alex earlier.
Okay,
Okay.
gotcha.
So
Okay.
sorry, guys. We're
All right.
No
well.
contradiction. There are different perspectives. Yes. There's a difference, especially when it comes to the dating of exactly when the Passover occurred. And that's because there's a difference between
right.
the interpretation of dating in Galilee versus that in Judea. And it's a well-known fact that they disagree. They had different interpretations. So to be all psyched out about different interpretations of exactly when the Passover occurred.
So this
Yeah,
is
I was
again,
gonna
yeah,
say,
this is
me and Simone were also thinking like, oh yeah, we know what this is about.
yeah. So
About
and
which
I'll
dance
just
goes on.
and maybe you can I'll let you explain what Cliff is getting at here. But one of
Yeah,
the things
we'll see if
just
he
setting this up here, right?
So.
One of the things that Alex pointed out earlier is that there are contradictions within the stories told in the New Testament about Jesus. And this is, in terms of the reaction of the thieves on the cross is next to Jesus and their responses to him, and then the time of the Passover is different in different gospels. Just depends on which gospel you read, right? So this is Cliff working hard. Working that harmonization engine hard to fix
I'm
these.
gonna let this play to see if he describes what the so-called problem was, and then I'm sure me and Simone will be able to tackle it.
I'm afraid it's a type of hyperskepticism that if you applied that to all of reality would lead you to be a very lonely, very isolated person. So I'm very unimpressed. I'm also very unimpressed because it's very easy to sit back and take pot shots at different people, a different philosophy, a different religion. But tonight, you put your head on your pillow, and I put my head on my pillow. And like it or not, you're going to have a worldview. I'm going to have a worldview. And Jesus Christ, I have said, is by far the most reasonable, credible, plausible explanation of who God is, of how we are to live our life, the whole dilemma of evil in this world, combined with...
He knows it's not, because you have to have the Spirit convince you of that, so it's not reasonable. You can't get to it through rational faculty. So anyway, he didn't explain.
There's text for that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't explain what the dating was. Okay, so allegedly, there's this big difference between Samaritans and Jews, which is where I don't know why he's saying Judea and Samaria as if those are the regional differences. Right. It's Samaritans allegedly versus Jews allegedly, and he doesn't say which sect of Jews, but whatever. The trope is, hey, there was a disagreement over whether Passover starts in the evening on the 14th or the day of the 15th on the first day of Hakamatzot. And this, I haven't found any major disagreements in documentation on this. Maybe Simone can help me out here. And I know that that's something people have discussed in rabbinic literature before, but it is extremely overblown the way that Christians use it, because they're trying to reconcile the two different crucifixion narratives. Did Jesus get crucified before the end of the 14th, or was he crucified on the 15th? And those two narratives do not align. You can't have both being accurate at the same time. So yeah, he wants to say, oh, one is using the Samaritan dating method, the other one is using the traditional Jewish dating method. That doesn't fix the problem. But
I flagged a couple things that Simone has pointed out here. Where did here? Starting here. There is no documentation for this difference of dating Pesach. They wouldn't be allowed to if they were following a purely lunar calendar, unless all the Galilee is represented by jubilees, and almost certainly not, right? Based on what we know of the Book of Jubilees, almost certainly not. But that doesn't line up because they sacrifice in the temple, right? Exactly. So
also, this comment really here isn't it more likely that the gospel authors don't understand Judaism that well, or that they're using different narratives for different purposes, and they're not double checking their work because they may themselves not have been practicing Jews.
Yep. So it's and this is just it, right? The explanations for these problems pointed out within the Gospels are fundamentally naturalistically understood. Like we don't need to thread the needle very, very tightly here. I actually have a third different Pesach based on the secret second solar calendar based on our secret second solar. Excellent. It's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, all right. Let's see. Good.
I wasn't gonna spotlight this person, but I just can't resist the no true Christian fallacy. Just can't resist it. It's just I set a countdown timer for any discussion with Christians before they start going, actually, we have the right Christianity and the other people have the wrong one. So they're really not Christians. They're just not.
Yeah. Oh, look.
All right.
Ricky's here.
Oh, hey, Captain Deadpool. No. This one has a little more to play before your next timestamp.
Yep.
So
okay, let's just see where this goes.
With tremendous goodness, and to listen to some people, I won't name names, but to listen to some people use the moral argument to object to animals being hurt in this life.
Yeah, that was
and to
so.
prey
That was
upon
positive
people's
for a
emotional
second, just to give
appreciation of
people some
animal life.
context. Phil and Alex both make as part of their argument for the non-existence of God, they use animal suffering, which I think is it's a thing, right? This idea that that because animals suffer needlessly, and because the Bible teaches that animals suffer as a result of sin, therefore no biblical God. I don't think it's a particularly good argument either, but just that's
as a result of sin, or in the sacrificial system, like
it's they're taking like they are
sacrifices.
Well, I bear in mind, Alex and Phil know a lot less about actual Judaism than they do Christianity. So
shocked.
It's
shocked.
It's almost certainly with regards to the Christian narrative of these things, or at least to the rather thoroughly evangelical Christian narrative of these things. So that's what Cliff is responding to here, and some of this stuff I don't really care about, but
I also want to note that Cliff is telling on himself here, because he's like, how dare you use people's empathy for animals to try to argue for your point? Like, bro, I don't think you realize what that says about you and how you consider animals. Like, trying to accuse your opponents of using emotional manipulation is rich coming from apologists. That is rich. Like,
especially watching Cliff in the moment here, right? Like this is all about emotion and persuasion for him right now. That's all that this is.
Yeah. One of my ops. So Falcon Bridge notes, Judaism was like, I can't believe Jesus is God. Shout out to Rabbi Tovia Singer. I have some of Rabbi Tovia Singer's books because he continually promotes them as expansions of his rapid fire claims to, counter missionize against Christianity. And I started fact checking a lot of this. And he needs to do better work because he is on the same disaffected former Christian to atheist pipeline train as all the folks who are like, I came out of Christianity, it was abusive, and I hate it, so therefore I'm going to delegitimize it by just repeating anything that makes it look bad. Therefore, he also, and I've highlighted parts of his book where he's like, oh yeah, the Christians just ripped off pagans, or Constantine did this, and it's like, no. There are way stronger arguments to make, but yeah, some of his work is sloppy, to say the least.
Let's be clear here, and I think this is very important to emphasize to my audience, guys. Tovia Singer is an apologist. He's
a counter missionary specifically.
He's a counter missionary. for promoting his version of Orthodox Judaism.
Yeah.
He
exactly.
does not know what he's talking about most of the time when it comes to the history and the theology of Christianity. He's arguing most of the time against straw men.
Yeah, and that
that he's forged.
honestly, his work would be so much stronger if he did better research. If he really showed
Yep.
like, hey, I'm going to address direct claims and not straw men, his work would be way more effective, and people might actually use it more. But yeah, so far I'm really unimpressed. You know what? Actually, Claude Simeon, that's a good question. I have enough notes to make a video. I'm just very bad at actually putting the videos out. I have a lot of in progress scripts, and then my ADHD makes me hyper focus on something else. I'm trying to work through it. But yeah, that's something I am looking at.
So I'm TTFF4444 points out here that, a stream on Myth Vision where he is asked if the Exodus occurred, and he just straight up says yes.
Refuses to elaborate, just disappears.
Yep.
Yeah, and like Simone also, nor does Tovia Singer have a robust critical model for the construction of ancient medieval Judaism, the critical models of composition of rabbinic literature. Yeah. And again, it's only because it's his specific brand of Orthodox Judaism. It's not Orthodox Judaism as a whole. But yeah, it's one of those things where I get really disappointed when starry-eyed atheist channels want to have them on without really, kind of scratching the surface.
I think this is a real problem, right? And yes, so Captain Dadpool had this experience firsthand.
You didn't know.
He didn't know, and he found out in real time, in the moment. So this is something that I see, and I think it's I think it's ridiculous. It drives me kind of crazy. The thing I can think of to compare it to is the way this friendship has developed between the content creators. David Wood, a famous former psychopath, apparently, who recovering psychopath, whom Jesus miraculously rescued from his severe mental disorder, psychological disorder. He does a lot of bad apologetics on YouTube, and most of his content is what's the word I'm looking for? Just unapologetically Islamophobic, anti-Islam kind of trope apologetics, but in his efforts to be a counter apologist for against Islam. Some time ago, he teamed up with Apostate Prophet, who has a really big channel. And he, Godless Guardian and others checked Wood's claims. There is no documentation of his origin story, apparently. I'm not surprised. Zod exposed evidence David Wood's backstory may not be true. I'd love to see a link to that, because that's something I'm kind of interested in. And even if it is, here's the thing. How much should we trust a psychopath, a documented psychopath, to be honest with us about himself?
Well, I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're compulsive liars. I mean, psychopaths and sociopaths, like that whole thing, it revolves around like your ability to feel empathy and guilt and things like that. It doesn't necessarily have to do with lying.
True, but doesn't it also don't successful psychopaths also develop strategies to respond to what people expect from them, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, and they'll tell you that. Like, there's studies how they kind of mask, because they know that broad society recognizes certain emotional reactions as like kind of what you're supposed to do. So they learn to mask, but I mean, that's also something that neurodivergent people do. And there's like fuzzy lines between what we used to just call psychopathy and now what we try to call sociopathy. Like it gets really involved, and that's not my area of expertise, so I don't want to go too far off on it. But
Mine
yeah,
neither.
I
But
don't
I
want to say like, oh well, because he's a psychopath, he's automatically a liar or whatever. But it's I don't
Right.
find his statements compelling.
Yeah. So part of why I brought this up though is because David Wood does really terrible Islamophobic counter apologetics on YouTube. He teamed up with Apostate Prophet, who was also doing counter Islamic work, more like counter apologetics against Islam, but originally from an atheist perspective. But increasingly over time, there's a disturbing trend that it's disturbing to me. I think to see just to see the direction that the two of them have kind of gone together, and I just say that to say, listen, the enemy of my enemy is not always my friend.
No.
In the first place, like I mean, I hate that's an expression, right? I don't think I have any actual enemies.
This is all I'm going to say to this person. You're not here to learn about evolution. Go to a channel about biology, like Forrest Falkai, for instance.
I'm not going to teach you anything about
myths, or literally anybody that teaches about biology. Professor David Splain, Savage Dinosaur, these people, Gutsit Gibbon. Those are channels that will teach you about biology. This is not a biology channel. So
it is not.
Anyway.
It is not. So, but yes, the enemy of my enemy is not always my friend. There are, I think there are clear limits. I'm not going to use the work of an apologist to argue against the work of another apologist, because both of them are standing on shifting sand. And there's just so much. There's so there's better ways to do this, guys. We don't need Tovia Singer's caricatures of the New Testament and early Christianity in order to show the problems with the New Testament and early Christianity. You can do it. We can do it without that. We don't need that. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's
what's the meme of it's a panel from a Batman comic where he's snapping a gun in half, and Batman is saying, "This is the tool of the enemy. We do not need it. We do not use it."
I like it.
But that's what that reminded me of.
Yeah. This is an apologetics free zone, guys.
Yeah. So there's like another minute or so in this section. Do you want me to let this keep going?
Maybe just let it keep going for a little bit. Let's see where it goes.
And then you try and use a moral argument that therefore there is no God.
Yeah. Okay.
That is
so
absolutely ludicrous.
Maybe
if there is no God, morality is relative. So what's
maybe we should jump ahead if he's going to talk about the moral argument and stuff like that. Because I know. So yeah, go to the next timestamp. And I skipped the response to this from Phil, but Phil rightly points out here, Cliff, you've got this wrong about biblical cosmology. Like, this is known. This is something that scholars are telling us. This is what is taking place within the literature. You are just wrong in your denial about the Bible's view of the cosmos. So
I hate making myself a liar. According to biblical scholarship, why should I quit believing in the Bible? Child, that is not what biblical scholarship is there to do.
Nope.
It is not telling you what to believe, and it is certainly not saying you should quit believing the Bible, because there are confessional Christians who do critical biblical scholarship.
Most
currently
critical
confessing
biblical
Christians.
Scholars are confessing Christians or Jews. I mean, that's just the way it is.
Yeah, there are people who they're theists who believe in whatever, their God is, and they still do this work because it's about history, manuscript transmission, cultural transmission, the overlap of cultures of influencing each other or not, the resistance of cultural assimilation, empires rising and falling. Like, it's about a whole lot of different things. It's not theology. That's a completely different
Totally
discipline.
different.
So
Yep. Yep.
yeah.
All right.
Aye, aye.
So yeah, hop on up to the 4757
Okay,
mark.
let's
and
do it.
I think that is scarily intellectually dishonest.
So
There's absolutely no description of the process that God used to create. And just because Galileo contradicted the accepted Roman Catholic understanding that the Earth was the center of the solar system tells you nothing about what the Bible says. It was a contradiction of how the Catholic Church interpreted the Bible and how Galileo did good science. And Galileo did a tremendous job in science and in interpreting the Bible.
yes.
Galileo said,
Okay, you know what? Wherever Dapper Dinosaur is right now, he is screaming in agony. He hates it when people are like, the Catholic Church didn't like Galileo because of his ideas. No, it's because he didn't properly show his work.
Yeah. But this is
But
so
that's a whole other. Oh, it's so frustrating. Blame it on the Catholics. Okay,
Yeah.
man.
yeah.
Okay.
So one of the things, like maybe this is the part to kind of what I planned on. One of the things I planned on doing here was talk a little bit about this term, right, in the Bible, rakia. It's this is what they're talking about. They're talking about the dome that stretches over the earth as it's presented in Genesis 1, starting in verse 6 here. This is what the text says. And God said, Yehi rakia betoch hamayim. Let there be a rakia in the midst of the waters, and it shall be a divider literally between water to water. It's going to divide between the waters, right? Do you see how this works? So
There's
that's
water
Genesis
below the dome, water above the dome.
chapter 1, verse 6. And Vish is reading ahead here. Verse 7 says, God made the rakia, and he divided, or it divided, between waters which were under the rakia and between waters which were over the rakia. That's what's going on here. That's what this is. The word
And you know,
itself.
that's exactly what they meant, like, physically, because later on in the flood narrative, God opens windows in the dome
is
to
what
let a
Josh-
bunch of the water
Oh.
fall.
Yes, exactly.
Come on.
In the flood story, when God releases the deluge on the earth, that's what it says. It says that he opened the sluice gates, or the windows, or the gates of the sky. He doesn't actually use rakia in Genesis. That's what, probably chapter 7 or 8. Oh, what's this? Sorry.
I
what
was
did Troy
just
say?
agreeing.
Oh, okay.
Oh, Sarah was saying one of the fun things about Judaism is its focus on studying the text, which is
Yeah.
what critical Bible scholars do. Which
That's
is
true.
why I'm also interested in the field, because I too love to study the text.
You're
Yeah.
here. There you go.
Mhm.
So, but this, so this is proof of concept, right? The way to get the water out from behind the rakia, because it's solid, is to open the doors, because there's water up there, right? You caught that in Genesis chapter 1, verses 6 and 7. There's water underneath the rakia, and there's water above it too. Did you catch that, Cliff?
Claude Simeon got us. Hey, biblical scholar Kip. Remember, the Bible has no science in it. You must have no understanding of the genre, according to Cliff.
I must not.
Must.
So, but let's talk about this word here, okay? It occurs 17 times in the entire text of the Hebrew Bible. And most of those are in two places. They're in the book of Genesis, chapter 1, and they're in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 1. The book of Genesis, it describes this feature, right? The dome of the sky that holds back the waters. Yeah, so that's Ezekiel chapter 1 this describes his vision of Yahweh, in which he sees him seated above the rakia, right? And that's what he's looking at. He's looking at Yahweh seated above this, you know, this dome of the sky. It occurs a couple more times in the Psalms. Psalm 19, verse 2. Hashemayim Masaprim Kavod El Umaase Yadav Magid Harakia. The heavens proclaim the glory of El, and the work of his hands are expounded by the Rakia. And if you understand the function and the formation of biblical poetry, you'll recognize these as pairs. These are doublets in this parallel structure by which Hebrew poetry works. So the Rakia is another expression of what the sky is there. Psalm 150 verse 1. Hallelujah, hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Because the show, hallelujah, hallelujah, birkia uzo. That's rakia there. Praise Yah, praise Yahweh, praise also El in his holy place. They are praising him. They have praised him in the Rakia, in the sky. And then it says Uzo, which is his strength, probably means something like his stronghold here. Okay. So and then it appears once more in Daniel, very much like in Ezekiel, to describe this vision of God in the expanse of the sky. So according to the Hebrew Aramaic lexicon of the Old Testament, this is the standard work on the text.
Mentioned.
Listen, if there's one thing you're going to get from any of my streams, it's probably a mention of Hollow.
Love it.
And maybe
I need to
I'm
pull up a reference so I can show them, because reading texts without reference.
Yeah, sure. Do you want to show them? Do you have a Hallowed there?
Which
you can show them?
Tell me which word you're looking up, and I'll
It's
I'll
Rakia.
grab it out of the. Oh, Rakia. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, stall for time while I scroll to
no.
the entry.
I mean, I could at this point, Vish, maybe I could just share my screen and show you.
Oh, do you already have it up?
Yeah, I do. So let me
let
me do it, guys. I have to share my entire screen here, unfortunately, but that's okay. It's going to be fine. It's fine, everyone. So there we go. And I will try to zoom in here. So, oh shoot. Okay, let's go there.
Wow, that is hard to read.
Yeah, let's fix this. Let's enter reading mode, shall we? And let's make it
mode.
That's reading mode, and let's make it big. Okay. Can you see it now?
There we go.
You got it?
Better.
All right.
Beautiful.
There. That's the whole entry, guys, for Rakia. You'll notice it's got some cognates here. In the Samaritan Pentateuch, it's Arki. It's got modern Hebrew and Dead Sea Scrolls equivalents. Jewish Aramaic, Syriac. I don't know what is that?
Mandaean.
That's Mandaean. That's right. Uh-oh. How do I get back?
People always forget the Mandaeans.
Oh no.
Oh man, look what you did. Boomer.
Look what I did, guys. I'm an idiot. Okay.
Boomer.
I have to go back and do this again. Okay. There we go. All right. Okay. What does it say here? Sky or firmament? The beaten metal plate or bow. Firmament. The firm vault of heaven. Do you see that there in the Septuagint? Stereoma. Stereoma in the Greek means well, I mean, I can pull that up here too. Let's look at that, shall we? Stedioma, do you see that? Do I have to zoom in on that one too? I don't
You
know
need
if I
to make it
can.
like
I have to
super
shoot.
big print.
I don't think I can on this site. So I'll just on point number 2 here
Can
of
you not hit
Stedioma.
Command plus because you're on a
Oh,
Mac?
yeah,
right?
maybe. Yeah, let's see. Oh,
There you
oh, there we
go.
go. Yeah, for sure. Okay. You guys
You're
see
welcome.
this? There. Thank you for helping me use my computer, Vishanti. Stedioma, the Greek translator of the Septuagint, understood this as a solid body. Look at point number 2, foundation or framework, the skeleton on which a body is, as it were, built. Metaphorically, a solid part, strength of an army. Look at point 4, firmament. For example, the sky, the heaven above. This is what it is, and the reason we understand it this way is because this is the nominal form. The verbal form of this word raka is used for the action of like a smith beating out a soft piece of metal into a plate. That's what the word is used for, and it's used pretty consistently throughout the biblical text and throughout other cognate literatures in that fashion. By rakia was understood the gigantic heavenly dome, which was the source of the light that brooded over the heavenly ocean, and of which the dome arched above the earthly globe. And then there's some bibliography there. There's a whole bunch of the virtually every instance of this word as it's listed. It tells you exactly where it occurs and its meaning in those places. And you'll notice that it's quite consistent throughout the entire text of scripture.
For anybody that's seen people do gold work, you take a lump of gold, and if it's at least a good enough quality, you can just hammer it into really, 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 really thin sheets, and you can plate things with it. So think about that when you're thinking about rakia. That's the same general principle as taking a metal, hammering it out really, 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 really thin, and then you can mold it into shapes or cover other things with it.
Yes, exactly. So, and before we move on, well, maybe let's play a little bit more of this. I have one more thing that I want to share about the rakia, but yeah, let's continue with this and then we'll see.
The Bible does not tell us how the heavens go. The Bible does tell us how to go to heaven. And you are mixing areas of knowledge. Science is not in the Bible. And just because Sumerian and Babylonian cultures believed in a steel dome, and just because a lot of the Jewish rabbis believed in a steel dome, does not mean that the Bible is teaching that there is a steel dome over the earth.
Where does he think the rabbis got it?
I mean, listen, guys. Let's be really, really charitable here and say, I mean, he's not wrong. That's not the reason why we think this is what the word means. The reason we think the reason is we know this, right? Like it's clear, it's obvious. I read the description. I read it. Genesis chapter 1, verses 6-7, the formation of the rakia. That's what it is. That's
to
just
clarify for anybody who might be new to critical scholarship and how like analyzing biblical culture and text works. When we pull out a lexicon like the Hollowed, it is not a dictionary that's telling you this is what the word means and that is it. It's a decree from heaven. Like it's telling you how the word is used, which is incidentally also what the dictionary does. So wherever Dan McClellan is, he's screaming because he hates prescriptivist definitions for things.
Yes.
But it's one of these things like when you look at all of the different times that the Bible uses rakia and the other surrounding cultures that are using the cognate word, here's how they're using it. And it ends up the consensus being, hey, we're hammering out metal into like thin sheets and, you know, forming it into other shapes and stuff. So
here's the novel idea, guys. And this is kind of what happened in, the 18th and the 19th century, when scholars started to really discover and to probe some of this comparative ancient Near Eastern literature from places like Babylon and Assyria, and then eventually in Ugarit, in northern Canaan, and looking more closely at some of the Egyptian texts, and then the Sumerian texts and stuff, right? Scholars start looking at this stuff and go, listen, when these texts are making descriptions of things that sound a lot like how they sound in the Bible, maybe they're actually talking about the same thing.
How about that?
Maybe that's the way to go here. Maybe
it's almost like,
I don't know,
cognates work that way. And that a lot of these languages are like, they're etymologically related because their languages come from the same
places, right? Like, yeah, it's
it's
almost
like most of these are Semitic languages.
All connected, guys. All right.
Yeah, let's keep going.
That is so dishonest, it's scary. That is.
It's not still. The point is that it says so. I agree. The fact.
No, it doesn't say that.
It does. It absolutely
Then show me where it says that.
So
it is not saying that. That is your interpretation, and it's a false interpretation. It's adding where the text is silent, and that's intellectually dishonest. If I read the Quran and I add to the Quran, that's intellectually dishonest. I need to study the Quran and quote the Quran. But if I'm
does he know?
Go.
Does he know what a hadith is?
Probably not. But it's just so the obtuseness. Is that a word?
The Bible doesn't say that. He's so mad. He's so mad.
It just it doesn't seem real. It honestly doesn't. How can you get this angry about something that you were this wrong about? Like,
I guarantee you, when he says, I've studied the Bible and I've read it for a bajillion years, he's only ever read it in English. He doesn't know the original language's grammar.
And
which is why he's so mad, because there's something in the back of his mind is like, I'm offended because you're threatening me. You're threatening my beliefs. Like, okay.
And it seems like he's clearly never read a text about the Bible. I mean, because
because those are false interpretations.
Oh man.
Okay.
Nuts.
Okay.
All right.
Let's keep going.
Going to add to the Quran and then take a pot shot at Islam because of my addition to the Quran that is so intellectually dishonest, it's scary.
Can I ask a question? Firstly, I think even if Phil is wrong here, I would not hasten to charge him with dishonesty. I think that he believes what he's saying to a T. You would just
claim about him choosing to be dishonest. The thinking is honest.
You were just talking about. You were just talking about.
So mad.
You were just talking about adding something to the Quran. I have, I guess, two questions that I want to ask you, Cliff. The first is this: do you agree with the scholarly consensus, the biblical scholarship that is, that both the long ending of the Gospel of Mark and also the story of the adulterous woman in John's Gospel were added later than the earliest manuscripts?
We're moving on. Okay, yes, he is. We're moving on here. He's going to start talking now about two texts, the pericope adulterae in John chapter 8 and the long ending of Mark. Hold on a second. I'm hearing something. I just want to. Okay. I think that's just my kid whistling in the bathroom. Let's carry on, shall we? I couldn't tell with my headphones on if somebody was like screaming in the background or if it was something else. It's just my kid whistling, fortunately. But Alex is going to move on here to these texts from the New Testament, the pericope adulterae in John chapter 8, and the long ending of Mark in Mark chapter 16, which are universally regarded by scholars to have been like late additions to the manuscripts, to the text. These are unattested in earlier forms of the Gospels. But before he gets there, I did just want to read something here for Cliff. Maybe you'll watch this someday, Cliff, and I'm going to try and help you. Okay, so I'm going to be reading from, and I'm making this really, really easy on you. Okay, so because I'm going to read from John Walton. John Walton is a credible biblical scholar. He is also an evangelical Christian. He is a pretty conservative biblical scholar. I think you'd like him. I really think you would. But he has written this book. I used to actually teach from this book, Ancient Near Eastern Thought in the Old Testament, Introducing the Conceptual World of the Bible. It's not a bad book. And despite the fairly light evangelical veneer, John Walton provides a very good appraisal of the Bible's place within ancient Near Eastern literature. So I thought it was important maybe just to read a little bit from this book. It's an easy book to get. Pretty sure it was published. It's even published by Baker. Look at that. Baker Academic. There we go. So here's what he says about the structure of the heavens. And I'm reading from page 168 here. The heavens were primarily the place where the gods dwelt. In Mesopotamian literature, Adapa ascends there to meet with Anu. The heavenly temples of the great gods were located there. Variations permit 1, 3, or 7 levels of heaven, usually with the purpose of portraying distinct levels for the habitation of different deities relative to their hierarchical positions within the pantheon. In Mesopotamia, they had theories regarding the distances within the heavens and the shape of the heavens. In Canaan, they believed the gods lived at the tops of mountains, but this was not a contradiction because the heavens are at the tops of the mountains. So that's then he goes on to say, in the Old Testament, little is said about the geographical aspects of the heavens, mainly expressing that God dwells there and that he created them. He continues to talk about the sky, though. The boundary between the heaven and the earth, I will call the sky. Its main function is what? To hold back the waters above. Some mountains are identified as intersecting the sky and perhaps holding it up. In other contents, for example, in the Enuma Elish, there is no mention of what holds up the sky, besides the sky being portrayed as a pavement of blue, Mesopotamian sigil mud, stone, blue, lapis, sapphire, something like that. Mesopotamian literature at times suggests that it is some sort of skin. It is represented by Nut in Egyptian iconography. In pyramid text 1040c, the mountains hold up the sky, which can only happen if it is considered solid. The Hebrew term used for sky is rakia. It is of unspecified material, but in at least one text, the reference is to something solid. In Ezekiel 1:25-26. We have no reason to suppose, I'll repeat that. We have no reason to suppose that the Israelites thought about the composition of the sky any different than those around them. We know from Exodus 24:10 that they shared the idea of a pavement in God's abode, and it is even of sapphire, as in the Mesopotamian text. P. Seeley has traced the developments of beliefs about the sky. He focused on the material that the rakia was made of and how thick it was. The church fathers likewise were united in their belief that the rakia was solid. Seeley concludes, astonishing as it may seem to the modern mind, with very rare exceptions, the idea that the sky was not solid is a distinctly modern one. Historical evidence shows that virtually everyone in the ancient world believed in a solid firmament. That's conservative commentator John Walton speaking.
Yeah, well, he's just a fake Christian, so
Nuh-uh. All right. Well, let's I've been going for
it's so funny you
like
mentioned
over
that's
an hour and
published
a
by
half.
Baker.
Yeah.
And I have my
Oh, yeah,
Baker.
your little
Yeah,
your
because I
little-
spent some time at their booth. Yeah.
You did. Excellent.
I did.
So they had a big booth at SBL. They usually do. They're pretty
Yeah, they did.
they're pretty big. All right. So, yeah, I've been going on for about an hour and a half. Let's listen to this exchange here concerning the pericope adulterae and the long ending of Mark, and I'll have a few things to say about that. If you guys have
Do I need face palm
questions,
protection?
you might. You just might, Vish. But let's play this last bit here from it's
I'll have
it's
it
about
handy.
2.5 minutes. And guys,
Alright.
if you have questions, throw those up in the chat, and we'll get to those at the end of the stream here before we get out. And
Alright.
yeah, let's see
To
what
later
happens.
interpolations of the text.
Due to the precise nature of the manuscript evidence from Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, there is serious question whether the end of Mark chapter 16 was an addition or whether it was part of the original writing. The same is true for John chapter 7, the end of 7, and the first 11 verses of John 8.
Pause it for a
There is
second,
serious
Vishati.
question
Pause it.
due to the fact
Is he reading? Is he reading from Wikipedia?
I hope not.
Anyways, carry on.
I wouldn't be surprised.
No.
Okay.
those passages are not found in the earliest Greek manuscripts that we have, whether those additions or not. Now, Alex, please answer the question. What is more reasonable than the God of the New Testament? Who or what do you put your faith in that is based on more evidence of reliability?
We're getting to this point of reliability because I don't want to just change the subject here. You didn't answer my
Alex,
question.
you asked a lot of, could you please?
Yeah, but you didn't answer my question. Do you believe that they were later additions or not?
I don't know, but there's solid evidence that those were possibly additions. I don't know.
Okay. In which case, because we have to follow the thread of the argument here, otherwise it's a useless endeavor. If we have good evidence to suggest that people were adding stories into the gospel manuscripts even after they were first published, do we not have good reason to therefore think that people could also add stories to these manuscripts before they were written? In other words, that there are all kinds of things that end up in the gospel manuscripts that did not actually happen, weren't in the earliest of traditions.
Historically, that would make zero sense because the earliest church and how close the events themselves were reported through oral eyewitness testimony, not oral tradition. It was spread throughout the entire universal church and was being preached not just by pastors who were looking for nickels and noses. It was preached by the common people. And so to say that there were early additions is such a leap of faith. It's scary just because potentially there was later additions. I don't think that follows. Maybe Jesus, Alex, maybe Jesus was just a cosmic hoax. It's possible.
I think Jesus existed.
It's possible. The question is not ultimately possible. The question is, what does the evidence point to as most reasonable, most reliable in light of the evidence that we do have?
That's right. Do you think that outside?
I mean, that's an important question, right? I want to be about the evidence here. What does the evidence have to say? The confidence of a middle-aged white Christian man is an incredible thing.
Truly.
It's
truly.
I really like this one though. Like heroin addicts. Seriously, it's bad, guys. It's really, really bad. It's bad. So like man, there was a lot in there, but I think it's important to just sort of walk through a little bit what just happened. Alex asked this question about these two quite well-known texts from the New Testament, John chapter 8 and Mark chapter 16. I think it's verses 9 through 20. I should actually have this open here. Mark 16, yes, verses 9 through 20. These are famous examples of places where we know for a fact scribes inserted stories into the text of the Gospels that were not part of the earlier versions of these texts. This is not a matter of debate or dispute. We know this. This is true. The way Cliff waffles on this is just, again, for someone who graduated from Gordon-Conwell Seminary, this is embarrassing. Gordon-Conwell Seminary administrators, if you're watching, I don't know, is there a recourse here to have your credentials repealed for utter stupidity, because I gotta say, I'm relatively confident that when they teach some of this stuff at even a place like Gordon-Conwell, they're going to talk about what's actually going on with these texts and not just waffle on it and say, well, I don't know, maybe these are inserted into the text, but we don't know. I mean, that's basically the answer that Cliffe has provided here. And it's just nonsense. Sorry, you were face palming hard there, Vish.
Wow. That was
That was something.
Does he realize the reason that Alex was asking him about the extended passages? Does he realize why that came up? Because a lot of Christians take very serious doctrine from those passages. And I don't know if Cliffe sensed that and wanted to just give himself an out by saying, well, I don't know, or what?
Yeah, it's a good question, right? I don't know. I have no idea what the plan was there, except to deflect. He absolutely understood why. That's why he blew right past. And you're probably right. He knows, but he's very offended by it, so he tries to redirect.
Well, heavens no,
yeah,
if he's offended.
Yeah. And by the way, speaking of just the one, not the long ending of Mark, but certainly the pericope adulterae in John chapter 8. If you guys haven't seen Dennis McDonald's, he's given talks on this particular text, and he walks through the way that he approaches this tradition in an effort to trace it historically, and he makes, actually, I think, a very good argument that the pericope adultery itself, this story from John chapter 8, is probably a very old story, possibly even one to be traced all the way back to the 1st century, but importantly, it was not part of John's gospel until much later. It wasn't until I think the 3rd, maybe even the 4th century, that the story of the adulterous woman ended up becoming incorporated into John's gospel. But yeah, check out Dennis McDonald's talk about it. It's really interesting. But this speaks to, again, it's a sore spot, right? The point that Alex is trying to mount here, I think he does a pretty solid job of using the manuscript tradition that we have. And just so people are clear, these texts, the pericope adultery in John chapter 8 and the long ending of Mark, appear rather suddenly in the manuscript tradition, starting quite a bit later, 4th century, I think, maybe 3rd. They might date back in some manuscripts that early. Offhand, I don't know, but I do know from my limited perch with regards to New Testament textual criticism that these are universally regarded to have been late additions. They did not appear in the early versions of Dennis calls the shared source Q plus Papias. Yeah, I think that's right. So, but these are stories, importantly, that were inserted into the Gospels, and after time of copying among large numbers of Christian communities, just became part of these texts. The early translations of the New Testament into English all included this stuff without any actual clear awareness of what it was or where it came from. It wasn't until the invention of textual criticism and when scholars started to collect manuscripts and document these sorts of things that we started to see, and we started to rediscover the history behind the text. But it's an important point, because you notice something that Alex suggested here. As a result of this, you know, we have real examples, clear, verified examples of large, significant, theologically significant, I said that twice, didn't I? Significant, theologically weighty, let's say that, incorporations of material into the text that is not obvious until you do an archaeology of the manuscripts themselves, until you actually dig in and perform the work of textual criticism. The point Alex is making is that if this is stuff that actually entered into the manuscript tradition at a late period of time, as late as the 3rd or 4th century, then what kind of guarantee do we have? Considering the condition of the manuscript tradition as we have it, what sorts of guarantees do we have about the stability and the stability and the reliability of these texts stretching back into an earlier time period? If you're not aware, our earliest manuscripts of the New Testament, the entire New Testament, don't go back any earlier than the mid-2nd century, and there are a very, very precious few of those. Even those that are dated to the mid-2nd century might be late 2nd or even early 3rd. We're talking about hundreds of years, 100 years or more after the actual composition of these texts. I've talked about it a number of times. Vishanti, can you maybe look up, see if you can find a picture online of P Oxy 5575. And I'll talk a little bit about this. This is a manuscript that that I quite like. It has just recently been edited and published by Jeff Fish and by my former boss Mike Holmes, who used to work at the Museum of the Bible. This is a remarkable text. This is a remarkable manuscript because it's old. For one thing, it dates to probably the early 3rd century, but it might be late 2nd century. It very well could be. It's right up there, along with the tiny handful of other manuscripts, such as P52 or P60. There it is. Thank you. It's beautiful. It's a tiny little fragment, but the remarkable thing about this particular text, P Oxy 5575, is that this is not like any gospel that we have in circulation today. This text incorporates portions of text. It sounds a little bit like Luke, sounds a little bit like Mark on a couple of those lines. And you'll notice there's only what I think it's like 14 lines, 14 partial lines of text. The Michael Holmes and Jeff Fish have managed to provide, sensible reconstructions of this, because it repeats text that we know from other gospels. But here's the really interesting thing. Embedded within these lines are also text that looks an awful lot like the Gospel of Thomas. So what we have here is a fragment of a manuscript.
Vadim.
Oh, Vadim.
You flip the image, put it in the right orientation like AIG does. They're notorious for having
Yes,
Hebrew
they are.
manuscripts flipped upside down because they
But
don't realize that Hebrew is
we can't,
aligned to the top and not the bottom.
guys, we can't be too hard. We can't be too hard on AIG, because this is a cardinal sin that has been committed by book publishers, respectable
I will
book
be hard on both of
publishers,
them.
who
They're
have
not respectable.
committed the same errors, right? It's it's frustrating.
We live in the modern era where there is no good reason to make that mistake.
It's
Like,
very
there are
true.
reasons, but they're not
Absolutely.
good reasons.
So, but yes, thank you. But as I was saying about this particular little fragment here, think of the implications of this. This might be the oldest Christian manuscript that we have. It might be. Not saying it is.
What is the text? The excerpt of text?
As I
here?
was, yes, it's bits of Matthew, Luke, and the Gospel of Thomas. But
Ooh, spicy.
but also that's it, right? This is not in the form of like an anthology or a collection of texts. This is a running this is a running pericope. So this is let's flag this one. I'll get to this.
Okay.
This is a narrative or a set of teachings of Jesus, right? And the implications of this are that it's so much like these three sources, Matthew, Luke, and the Gospel of Thomas, that it doesn't properly belong to any one of those, and yet strongly suggests that something older than those was circulating around before any of them were, that incorporate elements that we see reflected in all of them. I had lunch with Mike Holmes at SBL when I was there, and I asked him
nice.
about this particular fragment. And that's the question I asked him. I'm like, Mike, tell me, what is it? Tell me what you think it is. He said to me, it's a proto-gospel.
Oh.
It's a proto-gospel.
Okay.
This is the editor of the manuscript telling me this is a proto-gospel. This is so.
Wow.
Guys, the manuscript evidence the manuscript situation when it comes to the New Testament, when it comes to the Gospels, is pretty wild. 2nd century, we have almost nothing, and the bits that we do have include this: the wild, wild west of circulating stories about Jesus. It's what it is. That's what we're dealing with. But I thought we have a couple of super chatted questions. We have a few other questions. If you have some more questions, feel free to get those in there. But I did want to just run to a New Testament text critic to say something about the long ending of Mark. So I'm going to be reading from my very well-worn copy of the text of the New Testament by the great New Testament textual critic Bruce Metzger, famously the teacher of the PhD supervisor of Bart Ehrman. But he's got an entire section here. It's 3 pages long. I'm not going to read the whole thing on the long ending of Mark. So starting at the top of page 226, how did Mark end his gospel? Unfortunately, we do not know. The most that can be said is that four different endings are current among the manuscripts, but that probably none of them represents what Mark originally intended to stand as the close of his gospels. These 4 endings may be called the short ending, the intermediate ending, the long ending, and the long ending expanded. So he starts with the first one. The last 12 verses of Mark 16, 9-20, are lacking in the 2 earliest parchment codices, Sinaiticus and Vaticanus, in the Old Latin manuscript K, in the Sinaitic Syriac, many manuscripts of the Old Armenian version, the Adish and Opidza manuscripts of the Old Georgian version, and a number of manuscripts of the Ethiopic version, Clement of Alexandria, Origen, and Ammonius show no knowledge of the existence of these verses. Other church fathers state that the section is absent from Greek copies of Mark known to them. Jerome, epistolary, I think that's 123, ad hit, blah, blah. I don't know, something that Jerome wrote. Almost all the Greek copies do not have this concluding portion. So this is something Jerome knew already way back in the, is that 5th century? 4th or 5th century, I think. The original form of the Eusebian sections makes no provision for numbering sections after 16 verse 8. Not a few manuscripts which contain the passage have scholia, stating the older Greek copies lack it. And in other witnesses, the passage is marked with asterisks or oboli, the conventional sigla used by scribes to indicate a spurious addition to a literary document. So that's the long ending. The intermediate ending is this: but they reported briefly to Peter and those with him and all they had been told. And after this, Jesus himself sent out by means of them from east to west the sacred and imperishable proclamation of eternal salvation. This is present in several uncial manuscripts of the 7th, 8th, and 9th century, as well as in a few minuscule manuscripts and several ancient versions. The long ending, so familiar through the King James Version and other translations of the Textus Receptus, is several in the vast number of witnesses, so it's in the most, including several which also contain the intermediate ending. It's interesting that a number of them contain both. Most of the later uncials, with a great majority of minuscules, most of the Latin witnesses, the Vulgate, Syriac EP, and Coptic PT. It is probable that Justin Martyr at the middle of the 2nd century knew this ending. In any case, Tatian, his disciple, included it in his Diatessaron. So for the long ending in an expanded form existed, so Jerome tells us, in Greek copies current in his day. And since the discovery of W earlier this century, we now have it. We now have the Greek text of the expansion. So that's the 4 options, the 4 endings. Metzger continues, none of these 4 endings commends itself as original. The obvious and pervasive apocryphal flavor of the expansion, as well as the extremely limited basis of evidence supporting it, condemns it as a totally secondary accretion. So it, I'll just move over here to his conclusion on,
I was about to say, can you tie a bow on that?
228 to 229, yeah. So he says, we are left, after going through the reasons why scholars consider, the scholars generally consider the short ending to be the most original, even though there's some skepticism regarding the actual originality of even the short ending. He says, we're left with this, witnessed by the earliest Greek versional and patristic evidence. Both external and internal considerations lead one to conclude that the original text of the second gospel, as known today, closes at 16 verse 8. But did Mark intend to conclude his gospel with the melancholy statement that the women were afraid? Despite the arguments which several modern scholars have urged to support of such a view, the present writer cannot believe that the note of fear would have been regarded as an appropriate conclusion to an account of the evangel or the good news. So basically what Metzger is saying here, and I tend to disagree with him, I think. I'm not a gospel specialist, I'm not a New Testament specialist, but I think there's good reasons to consider the short ending to be an intentional ending, and I think there's ways of making it work. Some of these are compelling to me. They're not to Metzger, but here's the point. All that is known is that more than one person in the early church sensed that the gospel is a torso and tried in various ways to provide a more or less appropriate conclusion. It should not be overlooked that the text critical analysis of the short ending of Mark's gospel has an important bearing on the historical and literary source criticism of the gospels. Since Mark was not responsible for the composition of the last 12 verses of the generally current form of his gospel, and since undoubtedly they have been attached to the gospel before the church recognized the fourfold gospels as canonical, it follows that the New Testament contains not 4 but 5 evangelic accounts of the events subsequent to the resurrection of Christ. So
let me Let me press you to summarize that
Yes.
in one sentence.
We don't
Answering
know.
the question,
Okay.
is that long ending of Mark original to when Mark was written?
Absolutely not. And that is
Okay,
Metzger's
thank you.
point. Metzger's point is that of the 4 options, none of them are original to when Mark wrote. None of them.
Okay.
And the reason we are aware of this is because there's 4 of them, right? Which strongly suggests that there was something different there. Maybe it was lost. Maybe it was so odious and problematic that it was just completely excised and replaced by something of the 4. But here's the point. The point is that there is no real scholarly dispute about the long ending of Mark. The wide agreement on this is that it didn't end with those final 12 verses. And
Ooh.
I think
I love this comment. Tamara Vians says, I think a big problem for evangelical Christians is their lack of comprehension of the vastness of time.
right? Yes.
200 years is less than 2,000 years. So to them, the quote late editions are contemporaneous with the original. Yeah, that.
Like, let's
yes,
think about
thank
that,
you.
right?
You nailed it.
That's a very important
Yeah.
point that doesn't get made enough. Like, we're talking about centuries here, guys.
In history, like in historical context,
It's
that is a
2024.
long time.
How long ago? And think about everything that's transpired in our world since 1924. Right?
Or even 1824. Like, if
Yes,
I was writing
yes.
about, you know, the Napoleonic Wars, if I wanted to write about the end of the Mexican Inquisition that had just happened 4 years before that. It's like, look, if you're trying to talk about contemporaneous manuscripts and ideas that were passed along in the early forms of Christianity, you can't just go, well, 2 centuries later we have a thing. Like, no.
Yeah.
No. That is a very, 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 very long time for
Yeah.
ideas to change, to shift, for theology to become uncomfortable or more comfortable, for various oral traditions to either spring up, get changed, be written down. Some may or may not have been written down. Like, that is a long time.
It's a very long time. And
Good
Hayden
grief.
Tank is picking this up, right? It's a huge problem when I'm writing my podcast. Go check out Hayden Tank's new podcast. I'm going to be on there soon. You have to telescope. So much history. And there's a couple more here. It's the same issue with Carrier has 500 years at least between Bavli and the 1st century. Doesn't matter.
And see, like, the only nuance that I would put an asterisk for is that the Babylonian Talmud was basically done being redacted by, like, the 5th or 6th century. It doesn't mean it was written wholesale out of nothing. Like, this is one of the things that I get a little frustrated. Like, we have redactions, we have edits, we have people fleshing things out, which the Jerusalem Talmud did not benefit from. It stopped having redaction history like a couple centuries before the Babylonian Talmud, so that's why it's really difficult to get through. But people acting like, oh, it was created whole cloth out of nothing. Like, no, it took a long time to compile and
it
edit,
certainly wasn't. But
I'm not defending Carrier in this at all. I'm just saying, like,
just even our ability to trace the most of this stuff back, even much farther than the 3rd or the 2nd century AD is it's basically, you can't do it.
It's really
this one
hard.
this one here too. The very earliest surviving witnesses to the canonical autographs are dated 100 to 200 years after Jesus' death, and we don't know almost anything which happened before. And again, guys, I'll remind you, let's put it back up here. P5575.
There you go.
Right? Like the picture is different. The picture is different in the 2nd century. Okay, and it's frustrating and also exciting because
Yeah.
our access points here are so you know,
Team
dude,
Yerushalmi, baby.
you don't
Team
want to. That's a
Yerushalmi.
fight, dude. You don't want to pick on this channel,
This is
and
inside
and it's
baseball.
not because of me. All right, so that's
Listen, I'm just saying you can argue for the Babylonian Talmud, but there's an entire tractate that it just doesn't exist there. You had to take it from the Yerushalmi because that one's land focused and land specific. So Zeraim seeds, baby. Just saying. Yerushalmi supremacy.
yeah. Okay. I won't. Yeah, that's not my fight.
It's inside baseball.
Inside baseball. Exactly. All right. Well, I have that's what I wanted to cover here, and I'll just say one more thing. I started with this. I'm going to conclude with this, and then we'll get into some questions and some super chats. Guys, Cliff, Stuart, my guys, you've been to seminary. You should know better.
You think they're teaching them the text in seminary?
Listen,
Cute.
I've never been to seminary, but I taught I can't say I mean I've taught classes in seminaries before, and there was a seminary located across the bridge from the university I used to teach at, and I regularly mixed with the seminary faculty over there. Joel teaches at that same seminary. My good friend Joel Carrico. Maybe not all of them, but I certainly know that there's a lot of seminaries out there that are at least providing the talking points about what critical scholarship is, what it's doing.
Yeah, but only so they can rebut them.
Lots of places,
and I highly
like that, but not
suspect
everywhere.
that they're not teaching them honestly. But
yeah. And I guess that's the kind of education that Cliff and Stuart had. And if that's the case, I already think it's kind of reprehensible that you go loitering around university campuses harassing young people. But if that's the case, then all the more reason, guys, just stop doing that. You don't know what you're talking about, clearly. Most of the time. Like this is the stuff they're supposed to be good at. Think about that.
But they just got
this is
super
the stuff
butt
they're
chafed.
supposed to be good at. And they get it this wrong. I shudder in imagining how wrong they possibly can be about all the other bullshit. So
okay. How about some super chats?
Let's look at I've flagged a couple of questions too, so let's make sure we get to some of those as well. All right. What do we have here? Is this Equus? Sorry, I don't okay, this is Equus Andromedae, right? That's right. Okay, thank you, Equus, for the super chat. I'm sorry for the very awkward introduction. What is your take on the original meaning of Yahweh in light of him being an import into Israel? Could it have been lost to the pre-Israelite culture? It's an excellent question. And what I have consistently said in public spaces, and I've written about this in my book as well, I think that the writers of the Hebrew Bible did not know what to do with the word Yahweh as a name. I don't think they know where it comes from and what it means, which is why they end up constructing an etymology for it, which appears in Exodus chapter 3. And scholars have some thoughts and some ideas. It seems to have originated in the south, in the Sinai. seems to have been circulated probably among the Shasu, nomadic peoples, transiting back and forth between the Nile Delta and the Judean highlands for centuries. But I think we are not in a good we're not in a position to know really anything about the original meaning of the name Yahweh. There are some ideas out there, but at this point we just don't have enough data. So yes, Yahweh was imported into Israelite culture by way of probably these nomadic people, groups like the Shasu. In the historical reconstructions we have, Yahweh was a deity most commonly worshipped and was popular in Edom and among the Midianites. And we actually have some text within the Bible itself which suggests this. There's part of the Song of Devorah in Judges 5, which is one of the oldest texts in the Hebrew Bible, actually explicitly says this about Yahweh, that he came out of the south, he came out of Edom. This seems to track with historical reality. But yeah, the incorporation of Yahweh into what was probably originally the Sumerian pantheon, and then made its way down into the Jerusalem pantheon after the destruction of the Northern Kingdom. As with many of the things in the Hebrew Bible, traditions, ideas, texts, stories filter their way down into the south from the north. But thank you very much for the question and for your ongoing support of my channel. Emergency Moto, wow, thank you for the $10. Great stuff. Still listening, but got to get finished packing and get to the airport. Safe travels, Emergency Moto. Much love to you as well. Thank you so much. Claude Simeon, why some stories interleaved and others multiple occurrences? Creation and Abraham saying Sarah is sister versus Noah's flood and Joseph into slavery. So the question here, do you understand what he's getting at? Yeah. So he's
there are two narratives that were stitched together for those, like for Abraham saying that that she is his sister. Those are two conflicting narratives that were stitched together, I think, pretty cleverly. The story about selling Joseph into slavery, who it was, when it happened, those were also stitched together. So he's asking, like, why is that a thing?
I think what he's asking is, why are some interleaved like this while others, we have these multiple versions of the same stories surviving separately? Because we have that as well, right? Like there are, I think some of the, we have some examples for the, there's two stories for the naming of Beersheba. There's two stories about, and this is probably my favorite one when I'm teaching some of this stuff. I like to look at the two versions of the stories of the expulsion of Hagar. There are two stories of creation. There are two separate genealogies, primordial genealogies of the generations of Adam, right? In Genesis chapter 4 and Genesis chapter 5. So I think that's probably what the question is here, is why are some stories like this and some stories are like this? And I don't know.
Hypothesis.
Right? Like I don't know the answer to this question.
And I have a hypothesis.
Okay, let's hear it, Vish.
And Richard Friedman gave me the idea when I first started reading some of his work. Richard Elliott Friedman.
Yes.
It's because you have parallel traditions that are like common in the region, but because the Southern and Northern Kingdom really never truly were a united monarchy or whatever, you're creating a unified origin story. You're creating a unified culture and a unified backstory for people, especially after their return from exile. So you're taking these disparate pieces that, hey, maybe the North preserved a certain telling of this story and the South preserved a different telling, but you stitch them together because they're both part of our history as a people. So you don't just toss one, you find ways to stitch them together or to preserve them next to each other. And that works. That works when you're trying to build like identity markers and a shared like mythos.
Yes.
That's my hypothesis anyway.
Yeah, no, that's something that I could get on board with. But the fact of the matter is we just don't know. We don't know the reason for this, but it's pretty interesting. That there were multiple strategies at work to construct the text as we have it. And I think so. One of the things that I did in my, and I'll just say something that maybe if I this makes me think of some of the stuff that I did in my PhD work at the University of Manchester. One of the things, my PhD started as an exploration of the reception of the text and the persona of the prophet Jeremiah in not just the Dead Sea Scrolls, but in Second Temple Jewish literature. It got pared down to just the Dead Sea Scrolls for the published version, but I covered all of Jewish literature in my actual dissertation. One of the things that I noticed, insofar as, in particular, the scrolls are concerned, but I think more broadly speaking, in a lot of other elements of Judaism, it seems like they had different methods for handling even different prophets. Like, for example, at Qumran, when it comes to something like the prophet Isaiah, who's I think a similar analog to someone like Jeremiah, in that it's an amalgamation of a lot of prophetic material, oracles, proclamations from Yahweh, interspersed with historical narrative, stories about Isaiah. It's similar with Jeremiah, right? They're comparable in that sense. However, when it comes to the Dead Sea Scrolls, we find virtually no reflection on the life of Isaiah, and a lot of literature reflecting, representing, interpreting the oracles themselves. And the situation is the exact opposite when it comes to Jeremiah. We find almost nothing in the Dead Sea Scrolls of text reflecting on, interpreting, reconstituting oracles of Jeremiah, and yet we have a lot of literature that is basically rewriting or oh, sorry guys, there's people here and my dog is upset about that, so it's okay, Dagger, you're okay. So the point here is that I think this was just part of the convention. There are certain things that we do with Isaiah. This is how we handle Isaiah, which is different than how we handle Jeremiah. And maybe it might just be as simple as something like that, right? Within these old traditions, maybe the strategies were just so deeply ingrained that they were part of the transmission process. Does that make sense? Okay. Vish is nodding.
Yeah. I mean, she
doesn't look convinced, so that's okay.
I mean, what I was thinking of is how America, like the United States, builds its own mythology and its shared identity around religious freedom, because what we tell a lot of our kids growing up is, oh, the Pilgrims were these folks who just wanted to practice their religion unimpeded. So they came to America to seek religious freedom, and then they were having a hard time surviving in the new climate with all these new crops, and they couldn't hack it. So the Native Americans came and helped them, and they had the first Thanksgiving. Like, y'all, that is not the way these things happened. The Pilgrims weren't just unimpeachable moral figures. They literally did almost starve to death and die in the harsh winter But this whole like happy-go-lucky Thanksgiving story, that is not accurate to history. But yet
Sure.
we have holidays, the holiday of Thanksgiving, where we use that
Mhm.
iconography, we use that imagery, we use the happy feel-good stuff because it brings us together with our families and our like social circles, right? When people are sitting down to eat their turkey and dressing, they're not going, well, okay, but is the first Thanksgiving really actually
Yes.
historical? Did they
Yeah.
really have a nice dinner? No one cares. You're having a moment together as a social creature, right? And this is why I get really frustrated with, disaffected Christian atheists who are just like, it's all fake, it's all fairy tale. Like, you don't understand how human societies develop. Like, we're social creatures. We like sharing stories. We like eating meals together. We like having shared backstories. It gives us a shared identity. That's how freaking cultures started and why they continue. So this idea that it's only a binary of must be true, must be false, that is not a useful paradigm to try to apply to this. So it doesn't make the United States identity fake because they didn't have a happy-go-lucky Thanksgiving. It just means, hey, people exaggerated and kind of played off some of these themes, and it grew over time. And now we make kitschy little cutout turkeys out of handprints, out of construction paper, right?
That's what we do, right? Yeah. Yeah.
This is the thing. So think more in that direction when you're reading about the text.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to take is it all true or is it all fake? You don't have to take that tack because that's not how they were creating it. That's not how they were writing these things down. That's not how they were telling stories. So
Fair enough. All right. Shall we look at some other questions?
Yeah, there were some other really good things in here real quick. Claude Simeon for $2.
Oh, thank you, Claude Simeon.
So thank you. Modern Moralist, question if Dr. Kip could go is one minor prophet for Halloween. Which one would it be?
Oh. It would probably be Hosea, guys, because he's the OG.
Oh man, he took my answer.
He's the OG. He was
I like Hosea quite a bit.
Yeah. It's
he's my favorite.
Yeah. I also really like Micah. Maybe I'll throw an honorable mention to Micah there. Nahum is a little bit too he's a bit much for me.
Okay.
So yeah, but Hosea.
I like
yeah.
And just ridiculous attention to detail of how to build a building. That's respect for real. Like, make it this long, make it this wide, make this tall, make that. And some of the mysticism's pretty cool. Like that.
Yeah. All right.
So yeah.
Thanks for the question.
Let's see. Simone, we did not forget about you.
We did not.
I'd like to know how people reconstruct the Qumran site with such a small population at the site, 20 to 200, now 600 manuscripts. What are the economics of that?
Yeah. So, and this is one of the reasons why I think most scholarly reconstructions of the Qumran site and this group tend to suggest that it's not like this is a group of means. They're probably very well funded, so they seem to be highly educated, which already suggests that they're coming from the elite within the culture, and they seem to know a lot about the inner workings of the priesthood and the system, the temple establishment in Jerusalem. So they're insiders, or they come from that world, right? So they're very, very deeply disaffected rich people, living out in the desert there. But this is kind of an issue, right?
Sadducees kind of sucked and they were sellouts, so I get it.
Yeah, exactly. So this is, and I think this is why, like, Lawrence. Oh man, I just had what? Lawrence Schiffman.
Like
I can't
Milwaukee
believe
Atheist Lawrence?
no, Lawrence Schiffman.
No,
I
different-
can't
okay.
believe I just about forgot his name. He just wrote an exhaustive commentary on the Temple Scroll.
Oh,
So,
excellent.
like Lawrence Schiffman has been sort of promoting this idea for a long time now, like 25, maybe 30 years. He's been pushing this idea about, don't ignore these close relationships, this connective tissue between the writers and the collectors of the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Sadducees. And I think this is why, right? Like these are the Sadducees who thought the Sadducees suck. Like
I mean, we know that from especially like medieval feudalism, when you have different groups that are wealthy, elite, or in power, and one of them takes, the preeminent position, the other ones get real salty about it. So it's plausible.
Yeah.
That this is like elitist infighting, and it's like, y'all have more influence than we did, and we don't like it. So we're taking our toys and we're going elsewhere.
We're taking our ball and we're going home. We're leaving. So and I'll just say this too. So yes, they are. I mean, the group has means, and they're doing commercial work too, right? They're making pottery. It's probably for sale. They have a whole, like, they're making a lot of pottery. It seems like they're making it in order to market it. I think it's possible that they were also a scribal guild for hire. And that's a lucrative lucrative business. You can make a lot of money doing that kind of stuff back then. So there's
no printing press.
There are a group of means.
It is
So
expensive
now,
and long cost time
Oh,
wise.
and maybe I'll say one more thing about this before we move on. One of the ideas that I find kind of attractive, because there's all sorts of ideas that scholars kick around about the relationship between the actual site Qumran, the manuscripts themselves, and the broader world of this movement that we call the Essenes. And something that I am partial to is this idea that this was something of like a quote unquote retreat center. This was a place where people would go for not for a permanent dwelling, but for a time. They would bring manuscripts with them, and a lot of this stuff ended up getting deposited by people just circulating through the site, which I think helps to explain why there is as many manuscripts as there are there. And I think this works as well within part of the Qumran ethos, this idea of going out into the wilderness, preparing the way of Yahweh in the last days. Not everybody could do that. Like lots of the Essenes lived in the cities. We know this from Philo and Josephus. So I don't know. Maybe this was a place where they could go in fulfillment of this idea without it being permanent. So, but thank you, Simone, for the question. It's a fun one. Sparrow the Sissy. Do you think American Christians will ever make an effort to write down all of their own oral Torah editions and reinterpret?
They do. They publish a lot of books on the topics, actually.
Yeah. I mean, you look at something even like the Trump Bible, right? The God Bless America Bible. Like,
I mean, yeah, but even there, I'm talking about sects like charismatic, like Pentecostal folks who have very niche takes on theology and the Bible and spiritual gifts and things like that. They publish very small, like, print trade books, and like I have a few from like the time when I lived in Alabama, but they write them down. They're just definitely, they're not widely circulated because so much of this is like word of mouth, and then people who have access to like radio and internet, they can broadcast it. So
And just to maybe just to give an idea of how seriously some of this gets taken in those circles. When I was a teenager, there's an author, a fiction writer by the name of Frank Peretti. Do you know that name, Vish?
This Present Darkness.
There you go.
Yeah, I know it.
He wrote a series, right, of phenomenally popular novels.
Didn't read it. The
novels.
90s, like, God.
Yeah, this is the 90s. He wrote a series of phenomenally popular Christian novels all about angels and demons and spiritual warfare. And there's lots of apocalypticism in there. And guys, like, it's fiction, right? These are novels.
It's fanfic.
But
The modern Book of Enoch.
Yeah, but here's the thing, right? Back in the 90s, I circulated in some spaces where you could be in a Bible study with a group of people talking about a particular text, and somebody would actually say, well, in Frank Peretti's This Present Darkness, on page 271, he says this. And they would invoke this stuff as like, this is they would essentially, I think that's what's happening here, right? They're essentially creating an oral Torah.
Well, this is also Tim LaHaye and Jenkins. They did this with the Left Line series.
Exactly.
So much of what people in the Christian world assume about the Antichrist and the end times and all this crap actually came from Tim LaHaye and his co-author. And it is either hyper exaggerated from like Daniel, or it's just made up based on vibes. And people take that and don't really know much
just vibes
about the text, so they're like, holy crap, yeah, this sounds like, this tracks, and it becomes part of their their minhag, I guess, for lack of a better word. So
correct.
I think there's a
I've got two more here I starred. One more. I see one more that I got here. I feel like since I brought up P5575, I should probably say something about first century Mark. There is no first century Mark, guys. First century Mark. There's an excellent article in the Atlantic that was written by Ariel Sabar a few years ago that lays out the whole sordid story of this. For those who don't know, I'll just give you a brief snapshot version here. In 2012, also something also mentioned, if you haven't already watched it, I made a video about this. It's in my catalog. It's about 2-3 years old by now. On the connection between Josh McDowell, his own personal testimony, the whole first century Mark thing, and manuscript, the manuscript sales in the 2010s. So in 2012, a debate at University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, between Bart Ehrman and Daniel Wallace, famous New Testament textual critic. New Testament textual critic. Daniel Wallace made the announcement on the debate stage of knowing of the existence of a fragment from a manuscript containing the Gospel of Mark that dates all the way to the 1st century. And he, without mentioning his name, vouched for the reputation of the paleographer and basically promoted this as 100% totally legitimate. In spite of the fact that they had not yet seen it, the fragment was rumored to have been up for sale, and it was suggested that they were in negotiations with the Green family to sell it to the Museum of the Bible.
Oh, no.
And as it turns out, Dirk Obink, who was the paleographer, and he was one of the scholars who worked on the Oxyrhynchus collection of papyri at Oxford Museum for the Egypt Exploration Society, was like pulling stuff out of the EES collection and selling it and pocketing the money. So
Oh,
it's really bad, guys. It's really, really bad. But anyways, he ended up, I think he has been formally charged. He's in a heap of trouble. But as a result of all of this, sorry, okay. Whoops, what is that? Don't forget the part where, sorry, my camera's in the way. Let me move this. Don't forget the part
where at the later official announcement, he did the persecution complex thing of saying, well, if it's early, it has to be real. Everyone should agree with this.
Yeah, that's true. Yes, fair.
Also,
happened.
I think it's really funny. Falconbridge says 1st century Mark sounds like a ska band. That reminds me of a meme that I saw where it's like,
guys.
It says totally that Jesus is coming back with the sound of trumpets and like thunder and loud sound, and someone was like, well, what if Jesus is in a ska band? And
I think it must be, right? So
pick it up.
all that to say, as in the fallout of this, it was pressed heavily upon Dirk O'Bink was relieved of his duties for the Egypt Exploration Society, and it was pressed heavily on other scholars to get these papyri published, these ones that Dirk O'Bink had attempted to steal and to sell to the Museum of the Bible. So that's what happened in 2019. It could have been 2020, but it was this 1st century Mark turned out to be a 3rd century fragment, and it's tiny, guys. Like it is tiny. Like it's quite a bit smaller than even the granddaddy of them all, P52. It's smaller. It's like half the size of P52.
Itty bitty.
It's teeny tiny. Yes, it's a teeny tiny fragment from a copy of the Gospel of Mark, but no, it does not date to the 1st century. It's a 3rd century manuscript. But I love talking about first century Mark. Oh, hey. Little late to the chat. Cliffe and Stuart referencing Genesis 1:1 as evidence of a beginning is embarrassing.
That was something we did. I didn't bring it up because I knew it would derail us for like half an hour, but them say the beginning. It's like, no, you don't understand. Again, this is just telling me you don't know Hebrew grammar, you don't read it, so you only have ever read the Bible in English. So
Zach will be happy. He'll be very, very happy that I read a selection out of John Walton's Ancient Near Eastern Thought of the Old Testament. I know that John Walton is Zach's favorite scholar. And Zach, one of the reasons why we are friends is because you are embarrassed about Cliffe and Stuart Knechtle making stupid mistakes like this. If you weren't embarrassed by that, we couldn't be friends. So I am happy that you are, and we can still be friends. Love you, buddy. So, but I think that's probably it for us. Thanks everyone for hanging out as long as you have. I hope you've had fun. I've had fun. Have you had fun, Vish?
Mm-hmm.
So, and
I get to learn stuff even though I'm just producing. So that's a nice benefit.
Good job. Good job.
Thanks.
Scarfing down those tacos without anybody
off screen.
So
listen, almost every single stream that I am on, I am eating because I have a high metabolism, and oh my god, I'm hungry like every 3 to 4 hours. It's the worst. So, I know, first world problems.
Did Apologist show up? There we go.
Yeah, he's been here.
He's
been here for
has he? I'm sorry, I didn't even know.
Half an hour. Yeah.
Itty bitty Marky. Mm-hmm. I like it though. I like that, Paul. So, I'll just say I got a look. A preview of a script that Apology is working on for Christmas, and Bible prophecy looks pretty good. So keep your eyes open for that, guys.
Hang on. I wasn't going to give this guy attention. I was a math and science major through school, an atheist turned creationist. Okay, Joseph, I have a serious, for real question for you. When you say you were an atheist, does that mean you were never a Christian or raised in a Christian environment and then became Christian? Or were you someone who just kind of casually was a Christian or maybe grew up in church and then just quit going? And then you came back later? And when you were turning creationist, that's my third question. When you were turning creationist, what evidence led you to that conclusion? And would you be willing to discuss that on somebody's channel?
Hmm.
Okay, he says he was raised Catholic, so therefore you weren't.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
whole I was an atheist is like, okay, so you were culturally Christian. Okay.
Also, I don't know. I think
so-
there's something with.
I didn't say he wasn't an atheist. I'm just there's a little pet project that I'm running for people who are like, I was an atheist and then I became a Christian. Almost every single one of them were raised in church, so you just left for a few minutes and came back, which is where I'm going with that. But yeah, Joseph, I am extremely interested to hear about your turn into creationism. I want to know what evidence led you to that, and was that part of you returning to Christianity? So if you are willing to discuss that, leave a comment under this video, and we will put you in touch with some folks who will listen to you tell your story.
Excellent. Sounds good. I'm going to finish with this, if it's okay. It's good to see April here. Hail Santa, everyone. And this probably means I'm going to go on tomorrow evening with our bi-weekly Hebrew reading stream, but then I am not going to see any of you guys before the new year. So
I really
happy
wish
holidays.
any of them literally could have an original story, but it's just I was a Christian and then I became a slightly different kind of Christian. That's usually how that works out. So
those are stories for other streams.
disappointing. Yep,
This
those
one,
are stories for other streams.
This one is ending. Happy holidays, everyone. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah.
Stay hydrated. Kwanzaa.
All the
Saturnalia.
Kwanzaa, all the Saturnalia,
Festivus.
yes, all the holidays. Happy Festivus. Did you say that one already?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So but yes, and as a special Christmas treat, I will be releasing part 1 of my 2-hour conversation with Dr. Heath Durrell and Dan McClellan about child sacrifice after the weekend. So there you go, everyone. Watch that. Have an excellent holiday. Thank you, everyone, for your ongoing support. Thank you so much, Vishanti, for making the show go. I greatly appreciate it. And with that, guys, we're out. Peace.